boring. What they do is they jolt you out of the storyline because you've heard them so many times before. You lose the feeling.
And they're not very creative. You don't really have to have much creativity to remember.
That's exactly right. Okay, now back. Another couple of minutes and we'll be done. Then we'll have to do some others. Next. As Rachel wove, we never... Ethan, out please. Out. Just stand outside the door. Rachel wove, we never use these verbs unless we absolutely have to have them. Because it's a wasted word. You don't need it. As Rachel wove, in and out of the trees or between the trees, depending on what your word count is, you might have to get rid of that and just use the word between, whatever the case is. Don't come to me and tell me that you can't get your word count down, because I'll look at you and say, I bet I could halve it. I bet I could halve it and keep all the ideas that you are trying to say, Ben.
What if we can't get our word count up?
Then you're in trouble. It means you don't have a good enough climax, or you haven't developed your character well enough. And that's a real warning sign to go back to what you've written and see if the reader even understands who your character is. Is there enough drama and tension? Because the last thing I want you to do is pad it with meaningless stuff, meaningless words that don't create atmosphere or tension, because it'll be a C or a D, all right? So you need to go back to your storyline and check. Maybe your character's not having enough reported thought. Maybe your character isn't doing enough. Maybe your character doesn't have enough feelings. Maybe your character isn't using enough gestures. That is absolutely critical. Okay, glad you asked that question. If anyone else is in the same boat, you need to go back and check your storyline. So, excellent question. Between the trees. As Rachel wove between, maybe darted, I don't know, wove between the trees, she realised that this was the stupidest idea that she had ever had. You can also get rid of words here. It was the stupidest idea ever. And I would underline that, wouldn't I? Because we can change that word, can't we? Worst. So many other options. Craziest, yep. Craziest is good. And you can go on and on and on. Yes. Yeah, but that's 2 words. The worst idea ever. To come to the cemetery at night to meet friends. We don't need some. No semicolon. You would never put a semicolon there, would you? Who hadn't even come. Alright? So, we've started a sentence with then, and we started one with then up here. Try and avoid that. Note, interestingly, that we've repeated the same phrase, so that might be a pattern. We all have patterns as writers. Just be aware of them.
Well, if they were both the same, on the first one it has then, comma, suddenly, comma.
Yes.
And the second one's just then, suddenly.
Yes, they have a slightly different effect. This is then, suddenly, out of nowhere, whereas this is then suddenly, so a slightly different effect.
To get your word count down, you could get rid of then and swap she and suddenly. She suddenly.
Okay, so friends who hadn't even come. Okay, so you're saying, do we even need that?
Yeah, well, I said you could swap it. She suddenly snapped.
This is a really...
She snapped. You don't even need then suddenly.
This is another cliche, isn't it?
Yeah.
She snapped back to reality. We don't want that. Why don't we just have... We'll actually leave it there for now because it does provide fluency, but what if we have then suddenly she felt those hands clasp her skull, maybe.
Skull. I think you could just skull,
Protect
comma,
head.
and she.
Oh yes, thank you. Claws, it should be claws, shouldn't it? Clasp. Oh, maybe head is better than skull. She knew she was gone. Or you can have, if you're really stuck on word count, she was gone. or she was doomed. Something along those lines. So if we now do this, Ethan, you can come back in now. Look at the improvements we have made, and it took 45 minutes to do one paragraph. That's why I keep saying to you, you must be working on your narrative constantly. It's the only way to get it to the required standard.
Would
So,
that be an A standard now?
yeah, actually it would.
Oh, if I had to do all
We've changed that, yes, yep. Narrative writing is really creative, and it's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of hard work. Never underestimate the effort required to do it well. Okay, we will go over some more paragraphs another lesson, next lesson, because we need to move on to the book, but we'll do it a little bit less thoroughly than that. Okay, so everyone gets some feedback.
So we just have some time now to work on our.
I don't really want to give you class time because we need to actually keep working through the book. Can you stop that, Ben? Thank you.